I'm taking on one of the toughest challenges in FIFA, winning the Champions League with Athletic Bilbao. And trust me, with the rules that we've got in place, this is going to be one of the hardest saves I have ever done. So first, just like in real life, we can only sign players from the Basque region. This is already one of the toughest transfer policies in football. Second, any Basque players that we sign from Real Sociedad has to use their release clause. We're not going to bid on any of their players, only release clauses, because there's no chance that they would accept any bids in real life. Third, all academy players must have a Basque first or surname or be under the age of 14, just like Griezmann was back in the day. And finally, what I call the Nico Williams clause. If a bid comes in for anyone who's rated over 85 that exceeds their market value, I have to accept it. This means that we could lose our best players when we need them the most, especially further on into the save. Honestly, without that Nico clause, I'd probably end up keeping until he's 40, but rules are rules, and this could be one of the hardest saves I have ever done. Let's have a look at our squad. You already know we've got some really good talent on the wings thanks to the Williams brothers coming through our academy. Our defence is also decent, but DeMarcos and Pachiche are a combined 70 years old, so fullbacks is where our scouts are going to be looking first. We already have Sergio Vergara in our academy, but he's a bit pants and barely passes his Basque. Now, on to tactics, and I've already made two tactics for this team. The first is the default Valverde 4-2-3-1 that Bilbao use in real life, but we're also going to test this 4-4-2 in pre-season. It's very similar to Arteta's system at Arsenal, but mixed with the 4-4-2 that Valverde used at Barcelona. A little fun fact for you as well, Arteta is actually from the Basque region, so I guess even our team sheets are following the Basque policy. So there really isn't that many players we can buy in this first transfer window. We did receive a few bids. Atletico wanted Ruiz de Galarreta, but basically offered no money. Leipzig wanted Iñaki Williams, but again, only wanted to give us an older Willy Orban that wouldn't fit into the Basque policy. We also loaned out Padilla, a Mexican Basque player that's going to be our future goalkeeper. So let's also figure out which formation we should be using. We've got two games, one against Newcastle and one against Augsburg. So the first game against Newcastle, I'm going to go with 4-4-2 in this one, but of course things don't go quite to plan. I was feeling quite good, but Isaac decided to turn into prime Ronaldo and he would bag a hat-trick before half-time. We were playing a very high line in this match, so it's probably back to the drawing board on that tactic. Augsburg next up then, and let's go back to the 4-2-3-1. To be honest, straight away it's better. Nico steps up and bangs a free kick top bins, and Sansei is everywhere where we totally control the game. We grab a 2-0 win, but we've dominated, and I've got no doubt that we have to use this formation this season. I'm actually interested to know what you think though. Should we stick with the 4-2-3-1 or should we give the 4-4-2 another go later in the season? Drop a comment below and let me know what formation you'd run with. So with pre-season over, it's time to have a look at our first intake, and also try and figure out who's Basque and who we need to sign. We're going to use ChatGPT to decide, and he would borderline let us have Rivero, but he's not ever going to be good enough anyway. The rest of the players in this intake are purely Spanish, so no good for our Bilbao Basque policy. Our Andorra and France scouts also only provide Catalan and French names, annoying, but to be honest, that's totally expected. So this episode, I'll be playing these first three matches. Next episode, we'll cover our Europa League campaign, and the episode after, we'll finish the season and play any cup finals if we do manage to make it that far. I'm assuming we'll need at least 5 years to build a Champions League winning level team, so make sure you subscribe because this is going to be a very long series. Okay, here we go, our first big test of the season against Getafe. They're always a tough team to break down. They play 4-4-1-1 and counter-attacking, and that's such a good combination for the AI to use. But we're at the San Mames, and we need to make this a fortress if we're going to do anything in La Liga. The match kicks off, and it's pretty cagey early on. It just feels like both sides are trying to feel each other out, which is classic Getafe. We're trying to keep possession, but the wind is also really strong, and they're sitting quite deep, so it is tough to get the final ball or the cross right at the end of each move. But then about 20 minutes in, Getafe win a free kick just outside the box, and one moment of carelessness, suddenly Getafe whip it in the top corner. We're 1-0 down, and Mayoral's set-piece delivery was absolutely perfect. It's frustrating, but there's still plenty of time to turn this game around. Second half kicks off, and you can already see the wind is now on our side. Shooting into it is such an advantage, and Getafe are feeling happy just to sit back and hold on to the 1-0. We're pushing them deeper and deeper into their own half. We'll get a few half chances, but Nico can't quite score. And when he does score, he's offside. It's one of the closest calls I've ever seen in a FIFA game, but I'm not actually sure the referee got this one right. Anyway, in the 73rd minute, we get a huge lifeline. Alvaro Diallo bursts into the box, he skins his man and gets taken down. I'm not sure what the defender was thinking with that tackle, but the referee points to the spot, and this is massive. Sanset steps up to take it, deep breath, and slams it into the top corner. The keeper doesn't even have to dive. We're back level, and it's 1-1. The San Mames crowd goes wild, and you can already feel the momentum shifting, but we're not done yet. We stop a Getafe counter-attack before it can get too dangerous. DeMarcos moves the ball up to Berenguer, and then Sanset chips it through to Nico. He cuts inside. Jallo is there, he keeps his cool and slots it past the keeper. Just like that, we've turned it around, it's 2-1 to Athletic Club, and Jallo is absolutely the super sub. A goal and an assist, what a response after half time. After that, we managed the game pretty well. Getafe tried to push for an equaliser, but our defence is way too experienced. It's a massive 3 points, and Jallo's winner could be a turning point in a disastrous pre-season, turning into a pretty decent season in La Liga. In the week between matches, we don't really have to do too much. There's no transfer offers, there's no youth scouts to look at, so we're going straight in again against Barcelona. It's a huge one, and we already know we're not going to outplay them on possession, so we set up pretty defensively and try and aim to hit them on the break as much as we can. If we can keep it tight at the back and fight for a clean sheet, I'll be a happy man with a 0-0. Even on Parc de Bus, we somehow managed to create a couple of chances early on. Ter Stegen had to make a good save from this shot, and there was a moment where we did nearly get in behind, but their defence recovered just in time. That's basically the entire game though. Unai Simon was absolutely on top form and he made a ton of saves. We got a few lucky bounces that led to chances and nothing would really come off. 0-0 might not seem like the most exciting result, but this is going to be a massive point for us. It wasn't about beautiful football, but it's the kind of football that helps you win competitions in Europe. So it's going to be good practice even if the game was kind of dull. So it is still August and we've not had too long to learn about our squad yet, but there is still time to improve it. I think I know just the guy to fix our lack of fullback and lack of centre-back depth. Now, I don't need to tell you who Azpilicueta is. This man has won it all. Premier League titles, FA Cups, the Champions League, and even the Europa League. He's a born winner. And now at 34 years old, he's coming home to the Basque region, and honestly, I was pretty tempted to give him the armband. We're not going to do that though, we'll stick with Iñaki Williams as our captain, but Azpilicueta gives us a ton of composure at the back, and realistically, it's like having two captains on the pitch. Okay, so for the last time this episode, we're going to play another match. It's against Valencia, and Azpilicueta is going straight into the team. In fact, straight from kickoff, we are all over them. We knew that Valencia were going to sit deep, and we've had them pinned into their own half for most of the first 45 minutes. In many ways, it was possession football at its finest. Sanset was pulling the strings in midfield, he was spreading the ball out wide to Nico and Iñaki, and they were giving Valencia's fullback a real headache. We've had a couple of decent chances, Nico would send one just wide, and Iñaki's pace almost got him through here, but the keeper would make a good save. In fact, we get a corner, and after a couple of them in a row, the ball would drop to Azpilicueta in the edge of the box, and he would smash it off the post. So unlucky. Valencia kept scrambling to clear their lines, and you could feel the tension rising everywhere in the stadium. With about 30 minutes left, Iñaki would finally get in and finally beat the goalkeeper, putting us 1-0 up. That was a trademark Iñaki inside forward kind of finish. There's no way that any goalkeeper can stop a shot with that much power. So now we just had to hold on for 30 more minutes and we would have our second win of the season. Because they were now behind, Valencia started to attack and it paid off big time with just 10 minutes to go. Unai Simon palming the ball to Unai Gomez. Things were level yet again. We had one last attack with Sanset, but Valencia would get the ball, they would clear it, and I have to say we're pretty disappointed that we only got a point out of this game against Valencia. Alright, so the transfer window is still open and we've got some really big news. Bayern Munich have just come in with a bid for Unai Simon. You already know the rules of this save from the start of this video. If we get a bid for any player rated over 85 that's over their value, we have to accept it. But there's a twist to this one, it's not a cash deal, it's a swap deal. Now, I don't need to tell you this, that Unai is absolutely crucial to the team. He's one of the best keepers in the game, he's Basque, and replacing him would be nearly impossible. But according to the Nico clause, if we can negotiate this deal and Bayern agrees to play over his market value, I'll have no choice but to accept this offer. This is the most stressful part of the challenge, and here's where I need your help. Drop a comment below and tell me what you would do here. Would you try and squeeze more out of Bayern Munich and take the cash and try and improve the rest of the squad? Or is it too risky to even think about letting Unai Simon go? Of course, we can't take Upamecano because he isn't Basque in any way, so this could be a massive turning point for our season. We tried to respect the Nico clause, meaning we have to accept any bids more than his market value, and even when we negotiated quite close to it but still below his market value, Bayern didn't agree to sign him. Newcastle didn't offer us anywhere near enough to have to accept either, and thank God, we're keeping our goalkeeper for at least the next 6 months. Somehow, we actually survived the transfer window with Simon, Nico Williams and Sancet all in our squad, and boy will we need them, because this episode is going to be fully focused on how we got on in the Europa League. I hope you're ready, because this is going to be a very match-heavy episode, so let's start our Europa League campaign. Our first test came away in Rome against AS Roma. Thankfully, we had noticed that they had already parted ways with Dybala, which did make us feel a little bit more confident about beating them, but still, it was a very challenging opening match. In fact, in the first 5 minutes, Guruzzetta had a really good opportunity to put us ahead, but couldn't quite convert. A couple of minutes later, Sancet showcased some of his skills. He danced through a couple of defenders and blasted it into the back of the net, 1-0, and it's a big goal in our first game of the group stage. Just before half-time, Unai Simon would prove his worth with a stunning double save, reminding us of exactly why we fought so hard to keep him from going to Bayern Munich. As the clock ticked on, he also came through again in the 71st minute, denying a fierce Roma attack, and somehow we would hold on for a crucial 1-0 win against a Pot 1 opponent. So next up was AZ Alkmaar, who also had the Europa League's top scorer, Troy Parrott. Was he going to be a threat? Probably not. He's not the best player in the world, is he? And our team is so much better than theirs. But to be fair, Troy Parrott did actually cause us quite a lot of threat. He forced a double save from Simon early enough, but it wasn't really enough to rattle us. Bachiche had our first real chance, blasting one over the bar, and shortly after, Sancet would miss another good opportunity. I mean, just look at the shots on this graphic. Surely at least one of these should have gone in the back of the net. We just needed to take one of these opportunities, so when Berenguer played a perfect pass to Iñaki, who would outrun Martins Indy, Williams would hammer it into the top corner for a pretty spectacular goal. Honestly, the celebration was even more spectacular. What a flip that was, and we would fight for the rest of the game to keep a second 1-0 win against what turned out to be a very good side. That's a Pot 1 and a Pot 2 side down, and we're another step closer to the knockout round. We also got lucky that our second Pot 1 team was Slavia Prague. They're the worst ones in this pot. It could easily have been Spurs, Man United or Frankfurt. Instead, it's a team that's rated worse than any team in La Liga. Before we play the game though, we actually agree a new contract for Nico Williams. Not only is his buyout clause now over £200 million, but hopefully it will also stop any bids that come in for him in a couple of months' time. To celebrate, I think he probably gave his best performance of the season. Basque was the one that opened the scoring, but he was connecting with Nico's cross before he blasted it past the keeper. Slavia did try to strike back. In fact, they had a 6'9" striker who won this free kick. It was expertly converted to level the score, a second free kick conceded in about the last 10 games. Even though Slavia are one of the highest ranked teams in the competition, we kept pushing and Guruzzetta would hit the post. Iñaki would do a nice cross after some good play, and Sancet would smash it at the keeper from about 6 yards out. It felt like we just weren't going to score this second goal. But finally, Guruzzetta would play the ball through to Nico Williams, 1-on-1, and he would beat the goalkeeper. We went defensive when we had the lead, and held on for a second home win in a row, and a third win in a row in the Europa League. So you might actually be wondering now how we're doing in both La Liga and in the Europa League. Well, let's start off with La Liga, where we have started really well. We're currently in third after 12 games, but we've also only lost a single match. We're also third in the Europa League, and one of only 3 teams to have won all 3 games that they've played. I have a feeling that's going to get extended because there's not many times you can knock a team out of a competition halfway through, especially in this new Europa League format. But that's exactly how bad Drogheda United are. These are always the most fun games in FIFA, and I'm fully going for goal difference here to see if we can end this week in first place of the Europa League. The first goal basically sums up the entire match. It was hilariously bad defending and should have been a Nico Williams goal, but we recycled it and it turned into an Iñaki Williams goal. We kept pushing, and despite their goalkeeper actually being really good, turning away shot after shot, we just couldn't get that second goal. Then, out of nowhere, we spotted this run from our centre-back Ure. He joined the attack and showed our strikers exactly how to finish. Serrano would make it 3-0 off the bench by timing his run to beat the offside trap, and Martin would blast it in to make it 4-0. This hilarious goal makes it 5-0, and to make it even better, our players would then celebrate in front of the Irish fans after humiliating their defender. We would settle for 5-0, but really it could have been even more. In fact, both Napoli and Midtjylland have drawn, so now we're fully established as the only team to have won all 4 games in the Europa League. Get in. If we can just get a win and a draw from our next 4 matches, we're into the last 16. If we lose all 4, we're still into the last 32, so we can feel pretty comfortable about our position now. We don't actually have a better chance of winning a game than playing against Elfsborg, and this is a team that's lost 4 out of 4 and actually conceded 3 more goals than Drogheda, even after we stuck 5 past them. Of course, we're going to go for yet another battering, and Sanset's corner kick found Vivian's head, and that was 1-0 up pretty early on. Serrano followed up with an impressive dribble, passing to Ruiz de Galarreta, whose powerful shot did nearly find the net. Elfsborg would win themselves a free kick though in a rare attack, and it was chipped in, and their header hit the post before bouncing across the goal line to be cleared. Elfsborg would continue to find some space on the right wing. This time they reached the byline, they cut it back, their striker dribbles past 3 before tapping it in the far corner. I can't believe it's 1-1 against such a bad team. We have to make a change, so Nico and Iñaki Williams come on, and nearly instantly combine for a goal. A few minutes later, Nico would eventually find Berenguer out wide. He would pull it back across the goal, and Iñaki would smash it past the keeper into the net. To finish off Elfsborg, Iñaki would get the ball on the edge of the box, scoop turn past one defender, and then from nowhere, he would smash it top bins. With that win confirmed, all we need now is 1 draw from our next 3 matches, and we're into the knockout round. We would get that draw in our next game against Fenerbahce, and I felt like we had a pretty decent chance of winning this whole tournament. All we have to do now is try and survive the transfer window with all of our good players intact. So, we are officially going to be signing some players this month, but unless we get a huge bid for one of our superstars, there are only going to be academy players joining the club. That's right, for the first time our academy scouts have found some youth players that legitimately count as Basque, and honestly it's about time. Xavi Gomez and Xavi Reyes are both young enough to count as trained in the region, and there's no doubt that Aitor Sierra is a Basque name. Finally, the club has a new generation of prospects about to come through. That's pretty much all that happens for the first 3 weeks, and I don't know why I was so worried about losing any of our players. We've made it to the 22nd without actually receiving a single bid for a single player, and if we fast forward to deadline day, it finally happens. We receive a bid for Unai Simon from Atalanta, and I don't know how they've got this much money, but please can his market value be higher than this? So we head over to the squad hub. His value is £50 million. The offer is £65 million. The Nico clause is activated and we have to accept this deal. I actually decided to negotiate it a little bit higher so we can have some money for the summer transfer window, but our most consistent and probably most important player is going to be leaving just before the end of deadline day. We could always sign someone like Kepa when his loan ends, he's still kinda high rated, but until then we'll just have to use Julian Aguirre-Zabala instead. With 8 hours left, please can we not get a late bid for Nico as well? In fact, 2 bids come in, Berenguer and Vivian, but they're both bad offers and both get rejected. The clock would keep running down, and somehow we had survived with Nico, probably due to us offering him that new contract a few months ago. Okay, so let's get straight back into the Europa League, and we've left off with 2 games in the group stage left to play. We actually won both of them and got drawn against Victoria Pilsen in the round of 16. Victoria Pilsen aren't the best team in the world, but before we've even really settled into the match, Pilsen's forward would smash one off the crossbar and our keeper couldn't get to the rebound. They would volley it home, and less than 3 minutes in, we're already 1-0 down in the knockout rounds. This is definitely not the start we were hoping for. But we can definitely still fight back. In fact, Berenguer would pick up a lucky deflection in the midfield. He would beat his man and then run clear. It was just him versus the keeper and he doesn't miss. He slots it past them and we're back level. The rain is actually making it so hard to get into our usual rhythm though, and we're forced to defend quite deep. Out of nowhere, we mistime a tackle in the box, the referee points to the spot, it's a penalty to Pilsen. They would convert it, and all of a sudden we're down 2-1 yet again. Things get even worse when Nico Williams has to go off because of an injury. He's been lively, even if he is inconsistent, but as he was forced off, we brought on Iñaki instead. It doesn't take long for him to have an impact. Iñaki would time his run perfectly and latch onto a through ball from Sanset. His Travana shot would curl just inside the far post. It's 2-2, all square again, and we're back in the fight. A few minutes later, Pilsen's Durasinmi finds some space on the counter-attack. He manages to control the ball really well in the rain and then buries the finish. It's 3-2 and the clock ticks down. We're throwing everything forward trying to make this 3-3. Serrano has a late shot blocked and Sanset's last effort just whistles past the post. The final whistle blows and we're left with a narrow loss. It's a tough result, but we're just going to have to regroup for the second leg that's back at San Mames. If we look at our squad, we're actually going into the second leg looking kinda weak. Nico Williams, Sanset and Vivian are all unavailable, but we should still be better than Pilsen, and all we need to do is score 2 goals and we're in the quarterfinals. We kick off with the same tactics we used against Drogheda, going attacking early on, and Bachiche would flick a long ball down to Berenguer, who would smash a shot at goal only for the keeper to tip it wide. Hopefully good goalkeeping isn't a sign of things to come. Finally, we get an even better chance. Berenguer would find Bachiche on an overlapping run, he drills a low cross across the box, and Unai Gomez arrives at the far post to tap it in. It's 3-3 on aggregate and we're level. You can't afford any mistakes, so Pilsen responding with a long range effort took a really good save, but we're still level in this match. The game is actually really tense. You can tell both teams are pushing for the winner. Sanset would have a long shot from distance that the keeper just about managed to keep out, but we keep on pressing. And then from a corner, yet again Gurazeta rises the highest and heads it in. We're ahead on aggregate for the first time in this tie. It feels like the stadium goes up another level of volume and you can feel the momentum all of a sudden in the squad. Just when it seems like I'm going to settle for a 1-goal cushion, Iñaki would seal it with this stunner. He flicks the ball over the defender's head and volleys it past the keeper on the bounce. Aguirre Zabala keeps his composure in the last couple of minutes, and he was so important to keeping this clean sheet and getting us through to the quarterfinals. So, we've made it this far while technically only losing 1 match in the Europa League. This is going to be a massive night in Turkey against Fenerbahce, of course a club managed by none other than Jose Mourinho. You could tell right from the start that he'd got the tactics spot on. One of Jose's former players, Azpilicueta, would make an error off the ball and he would bring down a Fenerbahce player in the box. The referee immediately points to the spot and Nesri steps up, but Aguirre Zabala is equal to it, diving low to make a crucial save. But Fenerbahce don't let up. They're moving the ball around so quickly with some really good one-touch football, and St. Maximin finds some space but misses the target. It's a let-off, but just a couple of minutes later he gets a chance to make up for it. After some flowing passing, he finishes neatly and we're down 1-0. This is turning out to be one of the toughest matches I've ever played in FIFA. Their pressure keeps mounting, and En-Nesyri, who missed the penalty, manages to score from close range after some more quick build-up. We're now 2-0 down, and it's starting to look pretty bleak. I don't want to point any fingers, but Nico Williams is having one of the worst matches of the season. Even the EA graphics team noticed that he's off his usual form. But could we get a lifeline? We're pretty good from corners, and yet again Gurazeta rises above the Fenerbahce defence and heads it in. 2-1 and we're back in this tie. We do make some late subs, including taking Nico off after his stinker of a game, but Fenerbahce would hold strong, and that means yet again we're heading into the second leg needing a pretty big performance. I mean, to be honest, the only thing I really wanted to see before this game was the weather forecast. We're an awful team in the rain, it totally stops our passing football, and this game was going to be in the dry. Let them try and gegenpress us here, we'll find all of their gaps. It didn't take long after kickoff to see that our play was so much more fluid. In fact, the first real chance of the game fell to Nico Williams, but he was offside as usual. I guess at least the shot was saved anyway, but we're making so many chances, mainly from Iñaki, and his low cross causes a mix-up, but it was just about claimed by Livakovic. In fact, Livakovic was on top of absolutely everything. First of all, Nico would cut inside and smash one from the edge of the box, but Livakovic had it covered. And then Livakovic would stop Bachiche, and finally Sanset. All of these could have been goals. With time ticking down, we decide to throw on all of our attacking options. Super sub Jallo from the first game of the season comes on. He immediately cuts inside, unleashes a fierce shot, but again, Livakovic is there. Every shot, every chance, Livakovic is stopping absolutely everything. But we're still pushing. Iñaki would play a clever ball through to Jallo, who's one-on-one, but once again, Livakovic pulls off another great save. Fenerbahce would go on the counter, and En-Nesyri would skip past a couple of our defenders. He would end up one-on-one with our goalkeeper in the dying moments, and he does what we couldn't and slots it in the corner. It's all over. It's 3-1 on aggregate, and our Europa League journey is going to end in Turkey. There's no way to describe this match as anything other than a Jose Mourinho masterclass. The rain beat us in the first leg, and Livakovic was the deserved man of the match in the second leg. So this is it, the last 6 games of the season, and we've got 3 huge matches with the Spanish champions, our biggest rivals and our local rivals at first, and then we end the season with 3 games that could define everything we've done so far. But where is the drama coming from for this final episode of the season? Well, sure, we mathematically can't win the league, but we can easily slip into the Europa League spots. I think we'll need at least 12 points from these 6 matches to guarantee Champions League football next year, and I think the best way to start this episode would be getting 3 points at the Santiago Bernabeu. These are the games that we play career mode for, and in Spain they don't get much bigger than playing against Real Madrid at the Bernabeu. This match is called El Viejo Clásico, or the Old Classic, Athletic Club versus Real Madrid. We share a lot of history, we have a fairly big rivalry, and also a pretty similar future with both of us in the Champions League next season. What better way to measure how far we've come so far than to compare ourselves against the best team in the world? If we're going to do anything in this match, it's going to come from one of the 2 Williams brothers. We're trying exactly that from the start, and just 5 minutes in, Sanset would toe poke a shot towards the top corner only for Courtois to tip it over. Madrid would respond as Mbappe would find space. He would pull it back for Bellingham, who would fire a rocket at Enquiries, but thankfully he's up to the challenge this time. Madrid would win the corner, and somehow Boyro would outjump Rudiger, but Madrid would regain control of the ball. Valverde would capitalise on the rebound and smashes it home, a near post for a 1-0 lead. Just as we thought it would, our spark is coming from Nico Williams. He goes past Carvajal and tries to go past Rudiger, but the finish just about evades him. To be honest, Madrid's physicality is slowly wearing us down. In the second half we lose both Bachiche and Vesca to injury, forcing a double substitution. Losing those 2 players is quite a big change, and Madrid are going to try and quickly take advantage of our change, and we're 2-0 down. It feels like a bit of a mountain to climb, but we're not out of this game just yet. In fact, right from the restart, we press on. Sanset would thread it to Nico down the left. He would run to the byline, send in another low cross, and his brother's on the other end of it. We're 2-1 now, and we're totally back in this match. While Nico Williams is having a really good game, Mbappe is having an absolute stinker. Nothing seems to be working for him. He tries again here, but his shot deflects out for a corner. Real Madrid were actually dangerously close to scoring a 3rd goal from a corner in the same game, but this time Enquiries gets it clear. The ref would blow for the end of the game, and while this is a disappointing result, it's a pretty predictable start to our finale. This year we've lost 4 out of 4 to Real and Atletico, and that is going to have to change if we want to ever win this league. To be fair, to beat those kind of teams, you need a really good squad and an even better starting 11. Of course, we're quite limited in the ways we can actually improve our squad, and we've not spoken about our academy for quite a while. But after finding it tough for the first couple of months, our scouts are finally providing some decent Basque players. There's no doubt in my mind that the Arne brothers have a Basque surname, and ChatGPT fully agrees with me. ChatGPT also agrees that Ibai Vargas, Andoni Silva and Xavier Romero are all solid Basque players, and all of a sudden, we have a pretty good generation of young talent coming through. For the 3rd time this season, we win a youth tournament with our academy, and I can already tell that some of these players are going to be superstars. Anyway, back to adult football, and while Real Madrid away might have been the toughest game of the season, Sociedad is the one that the fans want us to win the most. They have weakened a lot over the past 12 months. Oyarzabal has moved to Arsenal, and Brais Mendes has moved to Atalanta, but that doesn't mean they don't have a threat that can hurt us. As usual, we start the game really well, keeping possession and looking dangerous. Nico would win as a free kick early on, and Iñaki would be the one that steps up with plenty of power. His free kick's tipped onto the crossbar, and the ricochet falls quite kindly for Sociedad as their keeper catches it quite easily. A few minutes later, Nico tries to beat Odriozola and then wins it back immediately. Williams passes it through to Guruzzeta, who drops his shoulder, skips past Zubeldia and squares it for Sanset to finish into an empty net. What a start that is, even if it's not the best goal we've scored this season. Bachiche later on plays it through to Williams, who leaves Odriozola on the floor. He cuts it back to Guruzzeta, who's cynically brought down just outside the box by Eguerd. That is a clear red card. We now have a free kick on the edge of the box. This time Nico Williams is the one shooting and he only hits the wall. Sociedad tried to play out from the back, but Iñaki wins it back, feeds it to Sunset, and his shot is tipped over the bar by Ramiro. After the break, Sociedad tried to respond, and it's Sukic who finds Sadik. He holds off 2 defenders and beats Aguirre-Zabala to score and level it at 1-1. Just a couple of moments, Sadiq plays in Sukic, who chips the goalkeeper, and out of nowhere, it's now 2-1 to Sociedad. We keep attacking, we can't lose this game. It's a shame that neither of these guys who've just scored against us are Basque, because they're exactly what we need coming off our bench. Sunset would have a power shot saved from the edge of the box by Ramiro, and just after, a throw-in would put Gurazeta in behind. He tries to finesse it into the far corner but can't quite do it, and all of a sudden it's the 88th minute. We still haven't found a goal, but we can cause a scramble on the edge of the Sociedad box. Somehow, the ball would bobble out of the scramble towards Nico, and he makes no mistake with his finish. What an end this game is going to have. We tried to clear the ball, hoping for one last attack, but the game would end 2-2. It was such an enjoyable game, super fun, lots of drama, and another point towards our Champions League spot. So with 4 games to go now, we have another local rivalry. This one's also kind of a scouting mission because Alaves are going to produce Basque players just like us. Quite a few of their squad are signable for us, so I'm going to make sure to double check the background of anyone who looks decent in this match. We're fully expecting to win as well, and that win would basically cement us in the top 4, so let's try and get it. So we start strong, as always. Sunset picks the ball up, plays a perfect pass through to Iñaki, who finishes it really confidently and makes it 1-0. A couple of minutes later, Sunset would attempt a long-range trivela. It's maybe not the right decision or quite as effective as he hoped, but still worth a try. Nico tries a shot from a tight angle as well, but it's saved, and we keep the pressure firmly on Alaves. Eventually, they have to push forwards because they need to try and win this game to avoid relegation, and eventually they do actually have a few chances. Aguirre-Zabala stands tall with a big save, but eventually Nico breaks free from halfway. He does a couple of step overs and picks out Gurazeta, who despite being injured, actually finishes really well in the top corner to make it 2-0. We don't stop there either. There's a beautiful piece of possession play that ends with Gurazeta moving it through to Nico. He chips it towards Gurazeta again, and eventually Iñaki leaps like a salmon to head it home. We need to start thinking about Season 2 as well, so I decided to sub off our best players and give some prospects some game time. One of these prospects is our Mexican backup goalkeeper Padilla. Almost straight away, Padilla had to make a really good save to keep the clean sheet, but we would hold on for a fairly easy 3-0 win. Alaves had more threat than we expected, and it's sad that we're going to lose another Basque team to the 2nd division, even if this Romuald Jacode social media clown doesn't quite agree with me. So, it's time to go back to where we began. The first 3 games of episode 1 are also our final 3 games of episode 3. We have Getafe up first, followed by a surprisingly successful Valencia team, and a big finale against Barcelona. The big news here is that we can actually secure Champions League football if we win and they don't. It's not even that big of a deal if that happens because we're playing against them in the next match anyway. Getafe are still using the same annoying 4-1-4-1 counter-attack formation that makes things really tough for us. Our one advantage is the amount of time we've had between games. We can rotate our squad and they can't, so we have a really good fitness advantage. In fact, it's a pretty dead first quarter of the game. Getafe had some attacking possession after a corner, and there was even a penalty shout for them right here, but that's never ever going to get given. Gurazeta would eventually intercept a pass like he loves to do. He would send it through to Nico, and he was denied by Claudio Ramos. Early in the second half, Diego Rico would do one of the most pointless red card challenges of all time, and we really have to take advantage of this. We do a nice slick bit of tiki-taka between Sunset, Berenguer and Gurazeta, and it ends with Gurazeta firing the ball into the roof of the net to make it 1-0. We continue to dominate the rest of the game. Serrano gets a chance after a nice flick turn, but he gets one-on-one and chooses the totally wrong finish. The game eventually ends 1-0, and the important thing is that we've secured the win, with Valencia also winning. While we haven't qualified for the Champions League just yet, all we have to do is avoid losing 8-0 in the next match. Surely even we can do something like that. Now, I was actually very shocked when I noticed Valencia's position. They do have a very good and quite fast team, and that's always going to be a worry. They snatched a late draw against us in game week 2, so let's give them payback and win to secure our top 4 finish. Richarlison is their key man, and I actually really like that move. It seems fairly realistic from both Spurs and Valencia. It wasn't that shocking to see them sitting this deep. Valencia were challenging our fast counter-attacking team to try and pick them off with risky passes, and we nearly did that in the first 5 minutes, but Enquiries didn't quite get the finish right. The wind in this match was actually insane, and that might be a reason why the sunset volley curled just wide a few minutes later. But then, we make a mistake. We intercept a through ball and end up passing it straight to Rafa Mir. With his finish, he's made no mistake, but are we on track for that 8-0 loss? We were so confident at the start of this game, but now we're resorting to shots like this from Sunset. We need to get a grip on this game if we want to have any chance of a draw. We need some magic, and Nico's the guy that can do this. He cuts inside from the edge of the box, he beats his man, and curls one into the far post. We deserve that equaliser, but will Valencia actually attack and open up the match for us now? Well, they get a corner, but it's a really bad effort. The ball is eventually cleared to our man up front, Prados, and he turns his man. He has Enquiries running alongside him. If he can get this pass right, he's definitely through. Suddenly, Enquiries is one-on-one. He tries to fake the keeper out and eventually rolls it into the far corner. It's a pretty bad goal, but it's a really good counter-attack, and this second goal seems to really annoy Valencia, because straight after, we need Aguirre-Zabala to make a really good save from a fierce Rafa Mir shot. With the clock ticking away, Valencia have possession on the left wing. They'd pull it across to Richarlison, and he would hit it near post, off the post, and it would bounce away to a Bilbao defender. It's a very stressful last 20 minutes, but we hold on to make it 4 wins in a row, and we qualify for the Champions League in the process. We're the most informed team in the league by far right now, and it's a shame that the season only has one more match. But what a big game that one last match is going to be. So, with the title really far out of reach for Bilbao, our place in the Champions League is secured, and we're purely playing this game to see how far we've come since the start of the year. It's been a long season, and we've had to fight for basically every point. We've found some players in the academy that we're proud to call Basque, and we're going to be using some of them in this game today. Aitor Sierra, welcome to the first team. Arnai is also called up and making his debut, and it's a proud moment for everyone related to either of them. They're given the ultimate welcome by the Basque footballing family, but can they stop Barcelona's own academy boys? Sure, Pedri, Gavi and Kubasi are on the bench today, but we know that we have a good chance of winning this game on the counter-attack. Imagine making your debut playing against someone like Alphonso Davies or trying to stop Rafinha. Well, that's exactly what these academy players are doing today. Nico early on tried to show them how they can score a goal in La Liga, but he couldn't quite outpace Koundé. Not for the first time this season, we were relying on our goalkeeper, and Aguirre-Zabala made a huge save to deny Lewandowski's toe poke. Could Aguirre-Zabala actually be better than Unai Simon was? Well, Barcelona kept attacking, and in the 22nd minute, Lewandowski hits a banger from outside the box that no one could have stopped. It's one of those goals that you can't even be mad at conceding. And not long after, Lewandowski tried another very similar shot that just missed the far post. After the break, we decided to push forwards and stop trying to counter-attack, and Nico would spot a gap for Arnai. His cross is perfectly met by Guerrero, and the volley could easily have been goal of the season, but not quite this time. In the 70th minute, we bring Enquiries and Bachiche on for the 2 academy graduates, and this is actually Bachiche's last game before he retires. He wasn't part of our next attack though. That was where Guerrero would intercept the ball really high. He would play a perfect through ball to Enquiries, but his shot is denied yet again by Ter Stegen. We even switched to a 4-2-4 for the last 5 minutes, going full kick and rush, but we still can't make an attack stick. Barcelona would win, and our 4-match winning streak comes to an end, but so does a fairly successful season. So that is our first season completed, and I think deep down, I knew that possibly could be Nico Williams' last game for Athletic Club. I mean, realistically, someone is going to offer over £100 million for him this summer, right? So maybe it's time to think about future signings. I still think Griezmann is out of our league and a little bit unrealistic, as he was Atletico Madrid's top scorer. Emerick Laporte is another signing that I'm kind of hesitant to sign, because centre-back is the one area we actually have some depth. Leave some comments if you've got any ideas of players we should sign, because if you don't, we'll probably end up spending a ridiculously huge amount on someone like Odriozola at Sociedad, or trying to find out if Rodri's Man City pre-gen has come through with a super Basque sounding name. There's so many ways I can improve this team, but the restrictions make it very, very tough. and we're only just getting started on a pretty fun journey. Alright, here we go, Season 2 of this Athletic Club save, where we're not stopping until we can grab a Champions League, and to be honest, we're pushing the boundaries of our rules this time around. It's been a while since I told you about them, so here's the quickest run through of the rules that I can possibly do. Number 1, we're only signing Basque players. Number 2, we have to accept any bids over market value for any player over 85. Number 3, we're only signing youth academy players with Basque names. And number 4, if we sign someone from Sociedad, we have to use their release clause. So, Season 2. This year we've got money, we've got some serious money. We sold Unai Simon last year, that helped fill the bank, and qualifying for the Champions League has turned our budget into something I never imagined possible. But with big cash comes big responsibility, and to be fair, an even bigger headache because our board's objectives are absolutely crazy, but more on that later. We're also going to be pushing the limits of the Basque policy this year. First up, we're signing Kevin Rodriguez. This guy is French and Portuguese, but while he identifies as Portuguese, he was born in Bayonne in France, which makes him Basque enough for us to use. Welcome to the team, Kevin. And next up, we've also got Ivan Martin, a quality attacking midfielder who signed from Girona. Ivan was born in Bilbao, but never played for us or any other club in this region. So this means we'll likely push Sunset forwards into a full-time striker role and have this guy a bit further back playmaking for us. It wouldn't be a proper Bilbao transfer window without some familiar faces returning home, and we're going to be bringing back Kepa and Ika Munye this window, while also adding John Moncayola into the squad. All three of these guys were way too expensive, but they were definitely necessary additions if we want to compete in Europe. Speaking of necessary, let's talk about board objectives, and if we want to keep our job, we need to reach the semi-final of the Cup, we need to win La Liga, and we need to reach the semi-finals of the Champions League. These objectives make sense for a team like Real Madrid or Barcelona, and I think our board just straight up don't like us and want us to go. Anyway, back to transfers. We actually got a really big offer for one of our wingers, but thank God it wasn't Nico Williams. Instead, it was Berenguer. We don't really use him, so I'm happy to accept and let him go to Real Madrid. And we also got a ton of loan offers for some of our worst young players. One of them was Giallo, who of course was a super sub last year, but he's going on loan to Roma for 2 years. To replace him, we have one signing that we really want to make, but I'm still unsure if they actually count as Basque, and I'll talk more about him later. Anyway, that is enough transfers for now, let's talk tactics, and we've been using this 4-4-1-1 for a while, and maybe it is time to experiment with something new and see if we can improve. The 4-4-2 failed us last pre-season, so let's try a diamond version of it instead. I think it's more suited for our team with a defensive midfielder and a playmaker, and we used it in this game against Aston Villa. Honestly, it's probably not suited to playing against good teams. We had almost no possession and switched back to the 4-4-1-1 to get a bit more control. If we can figure out how to get more players into the midfield, I think it would work against good teams, but I'm not giving up on it just yet. So, in this episode, I'll be playing the first 4 games of the season, and next episode we'll cover the entire Champions League campaign, and the episode after we'll finish the season, see how we did in the league, and see if we're in any kind of cup final. I'm assuming we'll need at least another 2 years after this one to try and build up to the semi-final level, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that. I think our squad is in a really good place this season, and we're about to start our season against Getafe. Getafe themselves have had a few new faces join their ranks, but some things will just never change. Their classic 4-1-4-1 counter-attack stodge ball is still fully alive and well, but since that pre-season game against Villa, we have evolved. Our wing-backs now invert into centre midfield, and this creates a really strong 2-3-3-2 possession style. It's really silky, it's controlled, and it looks like it's going to work. But the one downside is that it pushes Inaki a bit out wide. You can see it right here, but that opened up space for Ivan Martin to play the killer ball through to Sunset, and boom, we were already 1-0 up in our first game of the season. Because we can basically mark their entire defence with our entire attack, this is stifling everything they want to do. Martin even nabbed the ball off their defensive midfielder and smashed this shot that bounced off the crossbar. He was absolutely everywhere, but we did need to try and adjust him to stop him drifting out wide. We'll probably do this at half-time, and before half-time, he manages to cut inside for a big chance, only to smash it just wide of the post. Iñaki would find Gurazeta, who would slide it through to our makeshift striker Sunset. One touch, gets around the defender, and it's a toe poke into the far corner. It's Sunset's second, and we're running away with this one. Getafe would still muster a weak effort from the edge of the box, but it barely even tested Aguirre Zabala. I think we straight up broke this dude's arm, and he was their giant Tifo player, so it's clear the fans like him. I think that it's clear we deserve this lead though. We're aggressive, we're dynamic, and we're ruthless. In fact, a few minutes later, Moyonkola, one of our inverting wingbacks, flies into this slide tackle and earns a booking. That aggression is exactly what we want in this system. Sanset would almost get his hat-trick with this swerving pile driver, and we let even Martin rest after one of the best debuts we've ever given. Getafe would again barely threaten us. Enquiries finally had to make a save, but it was totally routine. We would go on the counter from this save, and Sanset could have gone for the hat-trick, but he would mess up the final pass, and that would be a deserved 2-0 win. Now, I have to ask you, are we serious title contenders? Is top 4 good enough, or will 5th place get me the sack? I want you to drop your season predictions in the comments right now, and let me know where you think we're going to finish. Right, let's talk transfers again, and we needed reinforcements from the wing. That was kind of clear in that first match. And for just under £9 million, we've snapped up the most in-form EFL Championship player, Borja Sainz. He's not world class, he's quick, he's a solid dribbler and he's banging form, and sometimes that's all you need. He counts as Basque because he was born in the Basque region, came through our academy and played a ton of games for Alaves, but even though he was the top scorer in the championship when we signed him, he's going to be on the bench because our midfielders are in even better form. He had good company on the bench though too. Iker Muniain was returning to the squad for the first time since he left 2 years ago, and somehow we were playing against the Valencia side that was even worse than Getafe. Their talisman or best player was a washed up Richarlison, except now he's paired with a 68 rated partner, Alberto Mari. With a squad like this, I don't think Valencia are going to be challenging for the top 4 like they were last year. We started strong. Guruzzetta looked through on goal, but Diakabi would wipe him out. Of course, that is only ever going to be a straight red. From the resulting free kick, our new boy Rodriguez whipped it top corner, only for the keeper to catch the ball. After some pretty ratty play, Sanset would eventually poke it through to Nico. Nico would beat the defender, and sometimes you just have to take the easy option. It's pulled across to Guruzzetta, and that is 1-0. Nico had a chance to score for himself with this curling effort, but the keeper got fingertips to it. Don't worry, because early in the second half we got some good possession. Martin would loft a beautiful chip over the top to Nico, and he would volley it home to make it 2-0. Around the 60th minute, there was a lot of applause as Muniain returned to the squad in his red and white stripes for the first time in 2 years. Sainz also came on for his debut, and Valencia's only chance of the rest of the game was a vicious corner volley, which was saved brilliantly by Enquiries. For the rest of the game, we just slowed the tempo and killed it off, and Muniain actually nearly scored a screamer from range, but full time, it was 2-0. 2 wins from 2, and we're already on more points than we were at this point last year. In fact, there's only 4 teams above us in the table. One of them's Atletico Madrid, who is our next opponent. We're flying so far. We've not had any bids for Nico, who's now grown to 89. We haven't had any for Sanset either, who's also grown above 85. Both of these guys are now vulnerable to the Nico clause, where we have to accept any bids above their market value. So maybe we do have some luck on our side. And to be honest, if there's ever a time we need some luck, it's right now. We're playing against Atletico Madrid. They have England's midfield duo, they have 2 of Manchester City's Champions League winning defence, and they also have 2 88 rated goalkeepers. Our team is full of 81 rated players, and it looks kind of ropey in comparison. This is by far the best squad we've played against this year, but we do have more points than them now, and we can go top of the league if we win this match. Early on, Ivan Martin would dance into the box, pass it to Nico, who would float it to Guruzzetta, but Oblak would pull off a worldy save. Hopefully this isn't just a sign of things to come. Down the other end, Carrera would sting the near post, but Aguirre Zabala says no, and that's why we still pick him over Kepa. Ruiz de Galarreta would win a header in midfield. Nico would pick it up. He would breeze past Conor Gallagher. He would throw it to Martin, who slides in Sanset into the box, and Sanset would poke it home. No one was expecting us to take the lead in this one, and Atletico would try to respond almost immediately. Carrera again, but Aguirre Zabala shuts the door on him. A little bit later, Sainz would have to come on for an injured Iñaki Williams, but straight away he was electric. Then it would go out to Guruzzetta. His back heel fed Ivan Martin again, who dribbled into the box. He kept dribbling. He's had a shot, then another, and the rebound would fall to Sanset, but Oblak would save that one too. I was a little bit confused why Atletico was so focused on trying to keep the ball and just keeping the defence solid. I mean, the only chance before the end of the game after that one from Sanset was this long shot from substitute Iker Muniain. The referee confirmed it, and for the first time, we had beaten one of La Liga's big 3 teams. It didn't matter that they had England's midfield and Man City's defence, because the Basque boys were just straight up better. So, as I teased earlier, it's time for the big transfer. Marco Asensio. Does he technically count as Basque? Well, it is a little bit of a grey area. His dad is from the Basque region, he spent some of his childhood living in Bilbao, and both his grandparents still live in Bilbao, as well as a lot of his family. Bilbao had actually once considered signing Tommy Orr, who was an Australian with Basque grandparents who never even set foot in Spain. So by those standards, I'm saying that Asensio is definitely eligible. But I'm not agreeing this signing until I know what you think. You guys didn't want me to sell Simon last August, so we didn't, and I need you to either comment sign Marco if you think he counts as Basque, or avoid Marco if you think he is fully Spanish. Okay, it's deadline day, and it's time to play our last game of August and our last game of this episode. With the Asensio transfer still in the balance, we're facing Levante, and we'll also be without Iñaki Williams for this one. It would have been the perfect time for Asensio to come into the squad and make his debut, but it's also a good opportunity for Serrano to impress, because he's our only other player that can play as a right midfielder. To be honest, this game is a home match against one of the worst teams in the league, so we should definitely be trying to make this 4 wins from 4 games. Let's make our play more fluid than normal, and I think Martin is going to be key. He drives us over the halfway line right here, it's played to Ruiz, then to Serrano, he finds Gurazeta, and then Martin again. Such good football, so why not hit it? He does, but Campos is always going to save that one. We had some more good play, and Ivan Martin would see Nico down the left. His ball is over Gurazeta, who hasn't kept his form from last year, but it falls to Serrano. He tries a volley finesse, it's way too ambitious, and maybe we just need to focus on simplifying our play for the rest of the game. And does it get more efficient than your goalkeeper throwing it straight to your winger? Gurazeta would then play it back to Serrano. His cross was way too deep, but Nico was over there. His header was met perfectly by Sanset, and that was 4 goals in 3 games for the Basque Bellingham. Who knew that moving him forward would have this much of an impact? One man not making an impact was Nico Williams this season, and his injury actually forced us to make a few more changes. One of them was bringing on Unai Gomez, and I think he was maybe a little bit too excited to play because it was less than 3 minutes until he saw red. I wasn't expecting it, but it wasn't the best challenge I've ever made, to be fair. So now it was all about seeing the game out. We wanted to keep our 100% win percentage, but we still wanted to attack. Sainz's cross nearly found Sanset's head again, and a few minutes later, Martin thunderstruck another one onto the crossbar. Thankfully, in the end, the red card didn't actually matter. We got the win, and we're going to enter deadline day a huge 7 points ahead of Real Madrid, 6 ahead of Atletico Madrid, and 5 ahead of Barcelona. What a season this could be, but it would be even better if we could decide what to do with Asensio. I'm going with yes, and I saw a lot of your comments also agreed with me. His dad was Basque, he still lives in the Basque area, as do dozens of his relatives, and to be honest, we need someone who can play as a striker and a right midfielder. For just £60,000 per week, we're welcoming Asensio into Bilbao 12 years after the club denied him joining from Mallorca. So, now let's move our attention to the Champions League. This tournament works just like the Europa League last year. Every club is put into one of 4 groups based on how good they are, and then we play against 2 teams from each one of these groups. We're in Pot 4, which is the lowest group because we qualified via the Champions League playoffs, but teams like PSG and Man City are found in Pot 1, and so on. This is going to be a really match-heavy episode, so let's start our campaign straight away. And it's actually a massive day for Athletic Bilbao. It's our first Champions League match in 9 years, and somehow only the 3rd time in 125 years that Bilbao have qualified for this competition. After a pretty decent season last year in the Europa League, this is finally the big stage, and in true Bilbao fashion, we've assembled quite a good squad with lots of Champions League pedigree. You might remember that Marco Asensio and Kepa have both won the Champions League, and they're both making their debuts in this match, hoping to get a little bit more experience into the squad. In fact, the atmosphere in Monaco was absolutely buzzing, and the game did start off quite defensively. It almost felt like both teams were more interested in staying unbeaten in game week 1 than going for the win. And early on, inverted wingback Moyankola had our best chance when he smashed one from the edge of the box after we pulled the ball across to him. It was the entire goal of our tactic to get him into this position. And Monaco would respond with their danger man Balogun driving into the box. We did a reckless slide tackle that missed him entirely, but Kepa would stand firm, producing his first big save for the club on his return. In the second half, we wanted to regain control in the midfield, so we switched back to the 4-4-1-1 to see how this would do in the Champions League. It worked pretty well in the Europa League last year, but tonight, Monaco's compact space is proving almost impenetrable. We can't find any space, we can't dribble, we can't pass around them, and if anything, the change actually opens us up slightly at the back. Vivian had to pull off this perfectly timed tackle to deny Balogun as he was racing through. Balogun, the man that we've been struggling to contain this entire game, turns both Azpilicueta and Vencedor with one touch. His shot is saved by Kepa, but the rebound loops up in slow motion, and as we scramble, Balogun would beat Uri in the air and bundle it home. We're 1-0 down. Minutes later, disaster would strike again. Monaco back heels slices through our midfield. Balogun would ride the tackle, he would power into the box, and then he would slot it straight past Kepa. 2-0, and the game does kind of feel like it's gone. We kept pushing, Gurzetta would drive in from the left and did nearly pull one back, and a rebound would also fall kindly for us, but we would miss that one too. The referee would blow his whistle, and it's been a pretty sobering return to Europe's elite competition. To be honest, we weren't actually too happy with how Asensio and Kepa were playing, and if we felt that last year's Europa League run was quite hard, this is going to be an entirely different beast. If we're going to get out of the group stages, we need to learn, and learn fast. The San Mamés was buzzing for our first home game in the Champions League this season, but the pressure was truly on. After that tough loss to Monaco, we need a result tonight or we might be slowly sinking out of the Champions League at the first hurdle. Milan, however, aren't here to make things easy. The match starts off with a flurry of Milan attacks. Leao, Morata and Pulisic all combine brilliantly, and Leao forces a pretty good save from Aguirre-Zabala. Kepa has been dropped. We were really not very happy with him, and only a few minutes later, Morata would take a speculative shot from distance just inches wide of the goal. The early warning signs were pretty clear. This is going to be a real battle of a match. We do grow into the game though, and Gurzetta would slip a clever pass into Sanzet, who would drive into the box just inches away from pulling it back to Iñaki Williams. That was a real glimpse of what we can do and the fact that we can do it at this level. Sanzet in particular is feeling really sharp. He tries his luck with an ambitious long-range strike, but Mike Maignan is always going to save that one. Still, it is encouraging to see us make chances. There was a moment of controversy just before half-time. Some slick one-touch passing got the ball into the box and Nico would go down under a challenge. The crowd didn't really call for the penalty and the referee just waved it away, saying there was nothing wrong with that tackle. As the game progresses, chances are still really hard to come by. Gurzetta would battle past Theo Hernandez and he would feed Sanzet, but the midfielder can't get it on target when it was a really good chance. You can see the frustration on his face, head in his hands as the opportunity slips through his fingers. We're starting to find our rhythm now though, and Nico has two good chances in quick succession, but Maignan denies both his shot and eventually his header. Of course, there's nothing Milan want to do more than remind us why they're a pot 1 team, and Morata would get two chances as well. The first is a tame shot at Aguirre-Zabala, but the second, the looping ball, forces our keeper to punch the ball clear. Just moments later, Benacer would thread a ball through our defence to Morata, who rifles a shot near post. It ricochets off Aguirre-Zabala's armpit and somehow bounces into the top corner. We're 1-0 down yet again. Our response has to be immediate, and with just 5 minutes gone since Milan's opener, we build an attack on the edge of their box. Nico Williams makes a good run from the right, Sanzet plays a perfect through ball, and Williams finishes the one-on-one with ice-cold composure. As the clock winds down, Milan slow the game down to their pace. Jovic would jog towards our goal at best, drawing a couple of defenders in, and into that space he finds Morata, who shoots near post, and it's into the top corner, 2-1 to Milan, and we have time for probably one more attack. In that last attack, before we can even do anything, the referee blows his final whistle. It's another loss, and now we sit joint bottom of the table. Only one team has worse goal difference, and things are not going very well on the pitch. But we haven't talked about how well things are going off the pitch. The academy is really important for us, and it's not really providing any superstars. We have two decent graduates in our squad, but Xavi Gomez and Jose Martin are our only real high potential prospects. I don't even remember signing Jose Martin, and we check on ChatGPT and it confirms my suspicions that he's not even Basque, so we have to release him too. With our academy in shambles, our Champions League campaign in shambles, we do need to head back to playing those games. And heading to Rome, we were actually quite confident. Last year we beat Roma in the Europa League and their teams only got worse while we've got a lot stronger. This felt like the perfect opportunity to claim our first win in the group stages. Iñaki Williams was now leading the line and his physicality made an immediate impact. Nico would surge forward, Sanzet was fouled, but Martin recovered the ball and played Iñaki through. His strike was only kept out by a fantastic save from Roma's Basque keeper, Alex Romero. Roma responded pretty much straight away. Uppbeat turned his man and unleashed a powerful drive from the edge of the box, but Enquiries was more than equal to it. We pressed on, and Sunset would find Asensio on the right flank. He would sprint into position for the 1-2, he hit it, and his shot would just skim over the crossbar, nothing more than a warning shot. At half-time, we yet again reverted to our last season's formation, and this time, Asensio was the man in charge. His lofted pass found Inaki, who outmuscled Hermoso. With the ball at his feet, he closed in on the goal and chose power over finesse, smashing it into the net for a very well-deserved lead. With Roma now chasing the game, their best chance would come from this world-class cross into the box, but thankfully Paredes' header was so woeful I can't even describe how bad it was. It was really lucky for us, and to see it out we brought on some experience, including Azpilicueta, who rolled back the years with some pretty crucial tackles and a nice bit of pace right here. We won the free kick and that helped us run down the clock even more, and the final whistle confirmed it. We'd somehow ground out a 1-0 win and 3 precious Champions League points. Fresh after breaking some Roman hearts in Rome, we returned home to face Galatasaray. On paper, this was an easier opposition than Roma, and our real rival in this match turned out to be the non-stop rain. The game actually started with a pretty bizarre moment. Galatasaray had a corner, and we defended it pretty well. We launched a pretty promising looking counter-attack through the Williams brothers, and just as Nico was about to break past their defensive line, the referee blew for a foul. I don't know why he did this, and it was probably the wrong decision. In fact, the rest of the first half was also full of wrong decisions. The rain-soaked pitch made almost every pass skid away or stop dead in the mud, and neither team could create anything of note. In fact, the first half ended 0-0, and I'm not sure there was even a shot. But things changed right after the break. We started pressing Galatasaray's defence, forcing Sanchez into this panicked clearance. It would rebound off Sunset, and as the ball broke loose, Iñaki Williams got there first. He made it into the box and smashed it home. 1-0, and we could be going on a little bit of a win streak. From there though, Galatasaray did try to fight back. Vivian and Azpilicueta had to stand firm right here, cutting out a couple of dangerous dribbles from Sara and Zaha. A few minutes later, Enquiries would make a vital save to deny Batshuayi, and Vivian would cap his defensive masterclass with this brilliant block, followed by a really crucial tackle. The clock slowly ticked down, and despite the conditions, we would hold on. The referee blew his whistle, and it was 2 wins in a row. We'd moved from bottom of the group to 14th overall, and the climb has finally begun. Actually, speaking of league tables, now we're in November, you might be interested to see how we're doing in both leagues. Well, let's start with La Liga, where we've started really well. We're joint first after 10 games, and we've also not lost a single match. Over in the Champions League, only AC Milan have won all 4, so maybe it's not the end of the world the fact that we lost 2-0 to them. I would have taken 14th at this point, but if we can get into that top 8 and guarantee the quarterfinals, we would be an absolute dreamland. To keep the streak alive, we had to face last year's Italian champions Juventus. We would have to beat them without our record signing because Asensio was sidelined for a few weeks with a twisted ankle. But it didn't matter because we still started really brightly, taking our first shot in the first 10 minutes. Martin would play a perfect pass through to Sunset, who aimed for the top corner, but Lunin was always going to save that. Juventus struck back with Galeno forcing a really good save from Enquiries, and from the following corner, Rudiger did nearly punish us. In fact, I hadn't noticed how strong their set-piece lineup is. Rudiger, Way and Brobby are all serious threats. As he has done in most of the games so far, Martin was running the midfield. He would play the ball to Iñaki, who squared it back to Nico. Nico would run into the middle, and his deflected shot would fall back into his path. And on the second attempt, we would score. 1-0 to Athletic yet again. And could this be the start of 3 wins in a row? Well, Juventus immediately went on the attack and earned this pretty dubious free kick. I'm not too sure what we did wrong there. Douglas Luiz would take it, and his delivery was met by Rudiger, who absolutely bullied Vivian, and Galeno would tuck away the loose ball, but the flag was up. Being offside has kept us from conceding a pretty bad goal. Enquiries wasn't covering himself in glory, but did come up big a few minutes later, denying Brobby in this one-on-one. Sunset then nearly delivered a moment of magic. He dispossessed Fagioli near the halfway line and drove through the Juve defence, before eventually smashing this shot, which would bounce off the post. Juventus kept struggling with our press. Nico and Muniain eventually would trap Rudiger, and just as Muniain lined up a shot, he was taken down outside the box. Surely that is a penalty or a red card. Well, no, it's actually neither. Just a free kick and a yellow. It's harsh, but we have Kevin Rodriguez. He can take a free kick, and his strike is absolutely perfect. Have a look at this replay. I don't think it could have been any closer to being a top corner shot. We're 2-0 up, and in the final 10 minutes, we just kind of shut up shop. We even tried out Nico as a striker. It didn't quite work, but it didn't matter. We got 3 wins in a row, 9 points in a row, and really, one more victory. We're going to be going into at least the knockout rounds, and maybe if we can win 2 or 3, we're going to be going straight into the quarterfinals. Our next match was the last match before the transfer window, so the last time we might have some of these players on the pitch in the Champions League. A win would be absolutely mega, but what are the chances we could beat a pot 1 team like Liverpool? Sure, this isn't the prime Klopp Liverpool anymore, but Van Dijk, Robertson and Trent are still pretty good, and they have improved their squad quite a lot. Their pre-match show featured a weirdly scary revealing of a John Barnes tifo, but the reveal of their team was even more frightening. It was so strong that Heung-min Son was actually on the bench. Ferland Mendy was on the bench as well, with Balde starting. This is one of the most crazy teams an AI has ever put together. So, is this game going to be open and high scoring, or defensive and boring? Well, the game began with some pretty big chaos. Liverpool could have had a penalty here in the first 10 minutes, but we did break out quite fast on the counter. Iñaki would eventually find himself one-on-one with Mamardashvili, but the Georgian goalkeeper would make a stunning save and keep it level at 0-0. Liverpool would try to respond to Gakpo, who teed up Isaac, but Vivian yet again produced a crucial block. Just moments later, Ruiz would release Nico down the flank, who would find Sanset, and then Iñaki one-on-one again. This time he chipped it over the keeper, and it was 1-0 to Athletic Club. But Liverpool would try to hit back almost immediately. A loose ball on the left saw Isaac link up with Gakpo before he slipped in Salah, who was in space, and predictably he is going to bury that finish every single time. Just a couple of minutes later, there was a carbon copy move, and Salah fed Gakpo in the box. This time, Enquiries could pull off the save and keep it 1-1. After half-time, Liverpool seemed to go up yet another gear. Salah would combine with Isaac, whose trickery opened up some space, and Gakpo would capitalise, spinning and smashing the ball straight past Enquiries. Soon after, our defence kinda just fell apart. Gakpo outmuscled our centre-back and laid it off to an unmarked Salah, who nonchalantly chipped it in to make it 3-1. That goal was game, set and match, and we can't be too upset because we did give them a real fight, but we struggled to gain possession for the rest of the match. The loss wasn't a massive deal. We can still win one of our final 2 games, or even potentially lose both of them and go through to the knockout, so the Champions League winning dream is still very much alive. But before we can find out by playing those games against Leipzig and Bayern, it's transfer window time. Again, we're praying that no bids come in for Nico because he is now 90 rated, and before we get to January, we do some mass contract renewals. I can't believe we nearly lost Vivian and Yurey at the end of this season, but that's all sorted now. Anyway, can we actually sign anyone new? Well, no. We have £4 million of budget, so we'll need to sell players if we want to buy new ones. Let's see what we can do, and week 1 we get an offer for Gurutzeta. This guy hasn't really been playing this season, so we negotiated to see what we could get. While signing Griezmann in the swap deal would have been amazing, he seems to have left Madrid, so we negotiated up and we got about £45 million for him. In week 2, there were no offers that I thought was worth accepting, or at least I thought that, because it turns out that Arsenal had triggered Sanset's release clause without me actually noticing. Our Season 1 strike force had left us in the space of 4 days, and that could be an absolute disaster. We need to find some players to replace them as soon as we can. In week 3, it also finally happens. Just before we get to the Bayern game, we get the offer we didn't want to see. AC Milan will want to give us £164 million for Nico. So let's check his value. It's only £130 million, so we have to accept this deal, going from the rules we set out in episode 1. Let's see how much money we can extort them for, and it turns out they won't even budge up by a single pound. So while I plan how we could spend this, the £130 million we got for Santet and the £46 million that we got for Gurutzeta, I'm going to need some suggestions. why don't we change our tactics? We find out that Man City's 4-3-3 will probably fit our new team like a glove, but it means we're definitely going to need to sign a new left winger and a new central midfielder. Maybe it's time to use one of the rules we've not used yet. Can you think of a team that have a very good left winger and a very good centre midfielder that is also Basque? Well, to be honest, Arsenal would be one team that has this kind of player, but also Sociedad. And the first move we make is to bribe Baron Zeta to betray Real Sociedad. He's not the biggest name, sure, but it's going to be a pretty big blow for our rivals. A few minutes later, on the same day, we also trigger Zubamendi's release clause, and there's nothing they can do about it. We again offer him a huge wage and an even bigger bribe to accept our offer. We didn't actually think he would accept, but here he is walking into our training ground. And walking the other way, Nico finally confirms his move to Milan. I hope he enjoys it there because he's now the second most expensive player of all time, and that puts a lot of pressure on a young player's shoulders. We round off our very busy transfer window by recalling Alvaro Jallo and buying a couple of backup players that are going to fill out our bench. There's no doubt looking at our squad that we're definitely weaker now than we were at the start of January, but that's exactly what we've set these rules to try to do. Now we just have to build up this set of players to be as good as our last set were and see how far we can get. So while all of this was happening, we did actually manage to beat Leipzig in the Champions League, but we did lose quite heavily to Bayern Munich. Still, we're through into the knockout rounds and drawn against Porto. If you can't remember, our objective is to try and get to the semi-final of the Champions League this year. If we don't, we'll probably have to win the league, but we need to start off well here against Porto, and it's annoyingly a very wet night in Portugal. There's a lot of pressure on us because of the board objectives, and last season we actually only won one knockout game and lost in the quarterfinals. This year, expectations are a little bit higher, and I think the players know what's at stake because we did start off pretty badly. Or maybe it's better to say Porto started really aggressively, encouraged by the home crowd, no doubt. Within 6 minutes, there was a scramble in our box, and that had us feeling pretty nervous. Porto would burst through, have a few rebounds, and they could have gone ahead, but thankfully missed all of them. We were pinned back for the rest of the half, unable to really string any passes together. It felt like a goal for Porto was almost inevitable. All we had to do is try and prevent that. Around the half-an-hour mark, their towering target man Samu would muscle his way through our defence, holding off Vivian before laying it off to Jamie. One touch, one strike, and it was 1-0 to Porto. We needed a spark, and it was actually Baron Azea who provided it. The new signing, whose move from Sociedad definitely raised some eyebrows, but he began to grow into this game. In this bit of play, he combined with Zubamendi, who was of course another former Sociedad man, and he got a decent shot off, but it was blocked. The whole reason we went for Zubamendi over someone like Moreno was to take control of games, and he really did exactly that just before half-time. He played through even Martin. Martin would surge forward, scanning for options, and he would find Baron at Zaya. He would cut inside his marker and unleash a curling shot past the goalkeeper. A perfect debut for the former Sociedad player. Porto seemed quite rattled from this. Their passing grew a bit sloppy, and Martin would pounce on the ball. Intercepting a loose ball in midfield, he spotted Baron Zaya's run into space. It was a really good cross, and he found Iñaki perfectly in stride, and the striker would lash it home to make it 2-1. Taking the lead in a knockout round game is always a good position to be in, and the rest of the match was basically Ruiz de Galarreta and Zubamendi running around, kicking as many Porto midfielders as they could. And that was enough to get the game back to the San Mamés with us ahead. When the final whistle blew, we left the pitch with a pretty hard-earned win, and for the first time, a small sense of security that we maybe could be doing something special in the Champions League. Both games being in the rain would have seemed like a nightmare normally, but I thought we actually did quite well away in Portugal. Because of our bigger squad, we were actually able to rest some of our higher rated players for the league games in between these two matches, so we did actually have a mostly fit squad. The same couldn't be said for Porto, who actually started off the game quite tired. The first 10 minutes proved their tiredness. Baronet Zaya was still trying to prove his worth, and he was just a constant threat down the left. His attempts to break through kept getting stopped though, either by the slippery conditions or by some very aggressive defending from Porto. He had another chance just a few minutes later, and with the goal at his mercy, his shot would sail wide, but despite how well he's been playing, this is the kind of shot that Nico would have buried if we hadn't been forced to sell him. Porto would begin to find their rhythm a little bit later. They would find a couple of gaps in our defence. Pepe would dance past 3 defenders and play through Samu, and Aguirre Zabala was once again our saviour when he rushed out to deny him. We were still clinging on to the aggregate lead, but only just. We changed both of our wingers and fullbacks early in the second half, and really we were playing with 4 centre-backs on the pitch. Literally just a few seconds later, a free kick for Porto was floated into the box and Danny Loader was unmarked, his volley finding the net and levelling the tie on aggregate. It's such an annoying goal to concede and such a crucial goal for Porto to score. So, with the game now level on aggregate, just before the end of the match we actually thought we'd played in Giallo, but just a tiny bit of his knee was offside. It's so annoying. Porto would actually have the last attack and probably only their second attack of the game just before the end, and if we concede here we're out. Thankfully though, the long shot is awful, and that means it's going to extra time. We were actually so close to getting in behind a few times in extra time. The best chance was probably this one with Iñaki. He didn't quite have enough pace or enough fitness to beat his defender. In the second half of extra time, we played some head tennis in the middle, but couldn't quite create a chance. It was also a few minutes later that we realised that Vencedor was playing injured and we couldn't sub him off. That's really not great if this goes to penalties and he has to take one. In fact, with just a few seconds left, Porto would try and prevent penalties. They drove into the box, but Uri was there again. What a slide tackle that was, and that confirms it. There is going to be a penalty shootout, and basically our whole career is on the line. Okay, so usually when I make these videos, what I do is I play the matches and I write some script so I know what I'm going to say in the videos to make it a bit more polished. But for this penalty shootout, we're going fully live comm, and I've already checked through our squad, and we have about 3 players that I think are good enough to take a penalty. So this is going to be really tense and probably going to have some quite fast circles moving. Alvaro Giallo taking our first one. Decent penalty, top corner. Goalie looked like he was diving that way. I think Montez is going to go right here, so let's dive. It's gone left. Okay, it's 3-3. Look how fast this circle's moving. Let's smash this in the top right. Come on, Iñaki. Okay, good. Goalie dives the wrong way yet again. But can we actually save one? This is Danny Loader, the guy that scored against us. No, he's done a little chip there off to the left. I always think it's risky to go down the middle, but thankfully the goalie dives out the way of it. Sometimes the AI, when you go down the middle, is so good at saving them, so we're probably going to keep going corners for the rest of this penalty shootout. Samu, this guy's got a lot of power on this. We dived the right way. If you put any less, I think we've saved it. We're so far into this penalty shootout, and no one has actually missed yet, so if we save this, we're through. We thought he was going to chip it down the middle. That would have been absolutely hilarious. Azpilicueta is looking nervous. His circle was so fast, but yeah, the goalie dived the right way, but way too late. I'm getting so nervous with these penalties, man. The 9th one in a row goes in, and we can finally save one. Come on, Otavio, their centre-back. We dive the right way, it goes underneath us. Oh my god, that was so close. I know I said I wasn't going to go down the middle, but let's Panenka. Oh, that is so embarrassing. The Panenka down the middle has been saved. And now Scally can be the man to beat us. Of course he does. We go the wrong way. He puts it in the top corner and we're out of the Champions League. I'll have to try and write up something pretty interesting to say because I can't really think of anything except so much disappointment that we're out against Porto. Okay, so we're out of the Champions League. That's not so shocking. Porto are a decent team and we have lost 3 of our best players in less than 3 weeks. But there's no denying that we're in a pretty bad state right now. Basically, if we look at the objectives, the board are saying if we don't end up winning the league this year, our career is over. We'll be sacked probably if we're ever not in first place, and we've still got to play 12 more games, including games against Barcelona, Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid, so this could be an awful end to our season. We have to hope that we can open a huge lead on Barcelona, and that's so unlikely, so things have never been so precarious. Weirdly though, the board are still pretty happy with us going into the Mallorca game, and that's pretty good to see. I mean, depending on the Barcelona match, a win here could see us go top, and it's also our 100th game as manager. Let's hope that we can make it to at least 150 and finally get that Champions League win. Mallorca themselves are nothing special. We've actually beaten them twice already this year, once in the Cup and once in the League. And annoyingly, the rain came down for a 3rd match in this episode, which as always makes any kind of flowing football almost impossible. Sometimes you just have to keep the ball in the air, and Baronet Zia did exactly that. His cross was so close to connecting with Asensio's head, but Mallorca's keeper was just tall enough to catch it. Our biggest threat as always was our counter-attacks, and they were so slow, being totally bogged down by the conditions. Iñaki had a pretty good opportunity in the first half, but his initial shot was saved, the header was also saved, and his 3rd header went out for a throw-in on the other side of the pitch. We were playing pretty frustrated at this point, and Asensio earned a yellow card for a pretty hard challenge on the keeper. We were so desperate to try and win the ball, and time was really ticking away. We just had to find a way through. We only had a few minutes left, and we had to win the ball off Mallorca. Morlanes would intercept one of our sloppy passes, and he threaded a ball through to Asano. One clinical finish later, our worst fears were realised. We were losing to Mallorca, and there was actually boos coming from the crowd. The game ended, and walking off the pitch, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe the axe was about to fall. Would we get one more chance to try and save our career? Or if we did, it was going to be against Celta Vigo. Celta Vigo are a weird squad because they have a couple of really good players and the rest of their team is pretty bad. We're also going to have to play a pretty bad team though, and this is definitely not our first choice attack in this game against Celta Vigo. Still, we have faith in Asensio even if he's not had the best first season with us. Just as we're feeling like off the pitch we've lost the dressing room, we got some proof that we haven't. Rodriguez proved we still have him on our side. This crunching block denying Celta Vigo's man Aspas in the box, and that could be crucial. Ivan Martin would block a pass in midfield. It would drop to Asensio, passes it out to Borja Sainz. The ball goes back to Asensio and Martin is played through. Just when we need someone to have our back, Ivan Martin is the man. What a start we're having. Ivan Martin plays in Asensio and his shot nearly finds the far corner. Barane can't quite slide in there at the far post. 20 minutes pass and we get a free kick in a pretty decent place. We pass it back, try and open up space for a shot. Uri plays it to Vivian, who loses the ball. Out of nowhere, Ivan Martin tries to block it, and Vecino goes down from this attempt. Surely this can't be a second yellow card. Well, in the words of Mick McCarthy, it can, and we're down to 10 men. We get one more chance just before half-time. Sainz tries to hold off about 6 defenders, and eventually Celta Vigo would win the ball back, and that's half-time. We just have to try and hold on for another half of the match and maybe we can rebuild our entire career. Well, to do that, we'll need our defence to be on fire, and they actually totally forget how to keep a defensive line, and that gives Celta Vigo a close range shot, but thankfully is saved at the near post. Barane would get played a really nice ball by Asensio and goes for the pull across the signs instead of shooting. It was a bad decision, and I think we could definitely have scored from that chance. In the 76th minute, a 76-year-old Iago Aspas would fizz one at the far post, and we actually press so hard for the rest of the game that Celta have the ball in their 6-yard box for longer than they have it in our half. But with the win confirmed, do we really have a chance of keeping our job? Well, with this win, we're ready to go straight into a game against Real Madrid. But before we can, we get the message we didn't want to see. We've been fired, and I really don't understand career mode sometimes, because I actually reloaded my save after the Porto game to see if it was possible to go further than this and save the series for you guys. Well, I simulated about 100 different games to make sure we're first, and guess what? The furthest we could ever get is the Real Madrid game. Even if we played this Real Madrid game on something like beginner or amateur and won 11-0, we would remain first in this alternate universe, but we would still be sacked. In this save, for example, I actually was 4 points clear at the top of the league, beat Real Madrid 12-0 on beginner, and still got sacked. It's as far as we can go, and please believe me when I say I'm so sorry that this is how this series ended. If I'd have known, I wouldn't have started it, and believe me, these objectives are going to be turned off for every other series I do this year. I've actually already got some of Season 3 planned that I'll never be able to do, and if you want to know what's going to happen, I'll put it in the comments below as the pinned comment, but basically, the spare Nico Williams money was going to be spent on Mikel Merino and Emerick Laporte, and Griezmann was actually going to spend his last season in the Basque region before he retired with us, and I think that would have been so fun, but it's just not meant to be. Even though it's ended so disappointingly, I hope you've still enjoyed this series, and I guess you can't win every challenge, but it's still a lot of hours of playing games, editing and uploading for me, and of course a lot of time for you guys too, if you've watched every single episode. I'll be starting a new save very soon, and if you've got any ideas that you want to see me do, leave them in the comments too. But thank you for so much support on this series, and again, I really do apologise if you think I've wasted your time with how things have ended. I think it was still a fun journey, and hopefully you guys do too, but thank you for watching. I'll see you soon. Cheers and goodbye.